get them.
Of our oral interactives. Yes. Don't say yes, they're wonderful. We love them. Don't we? I do. They're the, huh? Oh, the reflection's the best part. So hopefully we'll have a few minutes after to talk about the reflection. But you all know what to do because we've done it 6 times. 5 times. And I'll let them announce their topic. All right?
Okay, we are the inactive moral, and this is the Anslag, and it means the assault in Danish, and this is the original title, and that's the translation. And so if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Like, you don't have to wait till we open the group up, the oral discussion, so if you guys have questions to ask, raise your hand.
So, Fake Christ was the book's based on a real story, mostly, of, and Fake Plog in the book, in reality, his name was Fake Christ, and he was a real Dutch policeman, and he was good at what he did. In one night, he arrested 26 people, so for being opposed to the collaborators, like the resistance people. And so he was definitely everyone knew about him, and he was hated mostly. And so Truus Coaster in the book was based off of Hannie Shaft. Her real name was Jeanette Johanna Shaft, but during the resistance she used the alias of Hannie. So she was known in Dutch there that het misje met het rood haar. It's the girl with the red hair. She was her red hair was apparently very well known, and there are no color photographs from that. So not red. But, she planned on killing Fake Christ, but now that they've looked at it, they don't really know if she did, but Mulisch definitely used it as if she did. So for those purposes, she did. She was caught and killed 3 weeks before liberation, if you're wondering on the test yesterday. And she was killed in the dunes, and they took her out and shot her, and she survived, and she told the guy, "Ik schiet beter, I shoot better." So she had just been shot, and she's sitting there, "I can shoot better than you." And so she was a very tough girl. So a friend of Hannie's was Truus Overstegen. So this is where the name Truus came from, and Truus did participate with Hannie Shaft in resistance movements, and was actually Truus tried to save Hannie's life when when Hannie was in jail.
She created Hannie's Memorial, which was on the previous slide, which was the statue of the woman too.
What's she pushing apart?
Couldn't find it. Okay, so we're going to open it up to you. So Mulisch took the real life person Hannie Shaft and Truus Coaster. In what ways do you think that Truus Coaster was similar or different from Hannie? Ben?
I think his characterization being somewhat idealized to reflect certain, just to sharpen the characterization. Truth, she's probably better than a better person, portrays the best person than Hannie actually was. takes his pragmatisms, like exemplified, and Fake was described like from most of the perspective that he's an evil person. But it was that Fake Plug senior or junior?
That says junior back. Well, you could compare it to anyone, but yeah. Monica.
I think it definitely tries to make the connection between Truce and then the actual person Hanny like really apparent because, like you said, how she was killed in the dunes, and they mentioned that in Assault also for Truce. And I think they also mentioned that Truce had red hair, or they kind of compared her to Anton's mother who did have red hair. And so if that was what Hanny was known for, then that's another way he tried to connect them. And then just the fact that they're involved in resistance and with Fake.
Yeah. Okay. Just real quick, how would, when you give your answer, could you just maybe say how you would characterize Truce and how you would characterize Hanny with what you know, and try to compare those? Ready?
I think it's kind of interesting how he is using Truce in the book to represent Hanny, but in real life, Hanny's friend is named Truce. Like, I don't know what connection he's trying to make there, but it's kind of interesting how he did that. But was it really his mom who had red hair? I thought she was blonde, and then it was
The mom is blonde.
Saskia.
The mom is blonde. Saskia has red hair.
Isaac.
Yeah. To your part. When I was, with the information you just presented right now, I think it's quite interesting how, Hanny right here, she seems really truly rebellious, even with her own attitude, but then we have the real Truce character, and she is rebellious, but she doesn't seem like she had like a rude attitude, like she obeyed whatever commands it seemed, like she didn't cause any commotion so that the soldiers would be rude to her, or things like that. So I thought that was quite interesting, because it seems like Hanny has the kind of attitude that Takes did.
Okay. Sarah.
Well, the Hanny chapter that's just described seems like a really, really tough chick, but English sort of shows a little bit softer side because that discussion with Anton, it was like firm, but there was definitely feeling behind it, but I didn't really see that sort of sympathy, empathy, whatever you want to call it, in the characterization you just described.
Yeah, I think that's a definite difference.
Oh, for the good and evil part, like she said that she has a softer side, so we see her more as a good person, whereas with fucking Food Senior, obviously he's like, oh, here's the bad stuff, so you see him more as an evil person.
I just want to ask the question. Truce and Takes justify it in the book, but do you guys think that what they did, that killing Fake Plog, do you think that was right? Or is there anyone here that thinks that they were wrong to do that because it endangered lives?
I think it was wrong to kill Pocket because if you look at all the trees in the book, it kind of affected Anton's family and other families as well. So, like, just think about what would have happened if he was never killed. Like, how would Anton's life be?
Sarah? I feel like their intentions were good to try to save lives. Like they were killing him to save more lives, but they didn't really think it out. It wasn't well thought out, the plan, because the repercussions were more lives lost. So I thought it was for that.
I think it was good that they killed him. Obviously, they wasn't going there, but it was where they killed him. Like, out of all the places that were there, why they had to kill him in front of those houses? Why not somewhere random? Like, in the middle of the street or something?
Well, doesn't that sort of go along with hindsight being 20/20? You didn't know that, like you knew there were going to be some sort of repercussions that would happen in the area, but you didn't know that the officers would go and do this or do what they did. So then today it's easy to look at the book, read the book, finish it, and say, yeah, you probably should have done it in the park where nobody was around. But it is a good point that you bring up. I'm just to say that it's that, yeah.
I think whether or not you think it's good or bad would depend on whether or not you think the end is justified in meaning.
Alicia.
Yeah, I agree with the middle versus something like they had good intentions, but we didn't know what happened. And I think we should have taken responsibility for the body instead of just something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Due to time, I have to.
Those are all great points. We just have a lot of time.
We have more discussion points later on. So.
Oh yeah, you can talk plenty more.
Okay, so just some of the things that we thought about Truce and Hanny. Truce was portrayed as a mother figure, and when in the research of Hanny Shaft, I never really got that she was friendly. She seemed like she was devoted to the resistance movement, and she could have been, but it just seemed that was a different thing. Also, Truce seemed to be, I use anthropomorphic, it's maybe not the right word, but before, it's not really, I don't know how Anton's images of Truce were correct, but before he knew, he was just having ideas and then converting them into human form, and then that was what Saskia was. And you can see those on those pages, but we aren't going to go there right now.
What does that word mean?
Anthropomorphic. It means taking an idea, like usually the best example is God. Like some people believe God is just like an entity, but then other people are like, he's a human. So anthropomorphism would be like making human of an idea.
And some other similarities that we pointed out earlier was that she was killed in the dunes, like Truce, and then she was wounded before she was killed. Like before she said, "I shoot better," she was shot. They missed like her head or like the vital organs like to kill her, and she just goes, "I shoot better," and then they shot her and she died. So that was another example, and she was known as the woman with the gun because that's basically what turned her in. She was at a checkpoint, and they found a gun in her purse, and that is basically how she was imprisoned. And so we see Truce is sort of characterized by her gun in the book. So I thought that was like a similarity, how like the gun turns in Hanny, and then Truce is like sort of turned in by the gun herself. Okay, so I looked at World War II memorials in Holland, and it's kind of like you go by that way if you look at them. So the first one I found was the Mourning Woman, and I figured this one was very similar to the monument described in the book, and it's about 10 resistance fighters that were shot right on that spot, and it's to commemorate them. It's sort of how it's sort of like in the book, except the description is different. Like her arms aren't out, her hair isn't free, but I figured it was similar in a sense how it is in Haarlem, and it kind of commemorates the same thing. And then there's the Dutch National Monument in Amsterdam, and that is just a memorial for overall all the victims of World War II. Every May 4th, the Queen comes and she places a ceremonial wreath, and May 4th is basically the World War II day. That's where they remember everybody. And then there's also the, I can't pronounce the name, Thomas. It was originally a theater, but during the war it became a deportment. So it was like a deportment center for Jewish people, and after the war, they did not want to use it as a theater anymore because of the bad memories. So now it's a memorial. They have like a reflection room, and they have like a plaque in front of it that tells like about it.
And I can actually kind of talk about the Anne Frank house because I've been there. I visited Amsterdam 3 years ago. So it is the actual house that she lived in, where she was hiding. The interior has been turned into a museum. They preserved some of it, not all of the house, but they've kept like some, like the documents, like her journal, like desks and living room items and all that. So it's kind of emotional to see that this is where Anne Frank lived, kind of knowing the story about how she was deported and died in a concentration camp. And it's a very popular museum. Like, there's a huge line when you get there just to get in. You have to wait for a while. This question. That's the one on the bottom right, yeah.
Yeah. So the theater is on the bottom left, the Morning Woman is on the top left, and then the National Woman is on the top right.
I just had a question for this. I thought it was an office building, not a house itself.
There's a store in the basement.
There's a store in the there's a store in the ground floor, and then further up there's housing.
That's cool. When you think of how it's described in the book, that like they talk about, it's like an Egyptian, I can't remember the exact, but
an obelisk.
Yeah, an obelisk, and you can see where that looks very much like he must have taken it from
Yeah, that's what I figured it was.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, and then there were 3 concentration camps in the Netherlands. So there's a lot of memorials in there. The first one is another memorial for 15 people that were just randomly shot by a firing squad. And I can't read Dutch, but it means the man in front of the firing squad, just like a literal translation of what it is, and it's to commemorate the 15 people that were just randomly picked and shot. There's Amersfoort Camp, and that is the Man of Stone, which is beneath the other memorial of the men. And basically, this was a concentration camp. It was like another deportation center. Most of the Dutch concentration camps weren't death camps; they were work camps, or they were like centers for before they were transferred to death camps. So it doesn't make it any better than the other ones because sickness would kill people, there's starvation, and a lot of the times the guards would beat people. So the death rate was still very high. The second one is Westerbork Camp, and that was another transit camp. It was originally a refugee camp for the Jewish people who were escaping Germany, and they would hide out there, but when the Nazis took over Holland, it became a concentration camp. And then Hersenbusch Camp, that was built after Amersfoort and Westerbork because they couldn't hold that many people, so they had to build a third camp. And so the first monument, with all the stars, that is in Westerbork, and that represents one person who was killed who used to stay in that camp, so it didn't matter where they went. Like if they went to Auschwitz or another death camp, it represents each of those people. And then in Westerbork Camp, that is the room of reflection, so it's basically to kind of reflect how the emotions were affected in that camp.
Alright, so there's 2 major scenes for cemeteries. So if you guys open up your book to page 119. And so leading up to this event, there's it's when Saskia and her family go to her father's friend's funeral. So Solford, I think that's how you pronounce it. And he meets Takes there at the bar, and then they go outside into the cemetery. And then when they're talking, and then when Takes mentions he wasn't the only one that shot Klug Sr., it kind of opens he connects her, that lady that he doesn't mention at that time, to Truus. Or he connects Truus to someone he remembered when he talked to her in the dark. And so can I have someone read the middle paragraph where Anton stared at him?
Anton stared at him, and suddenly all the pent-up emotion washed over him. Putting his face in his hands, he turned away and began to sob. She was dying. For him, she died at this very moment, as if 21 years were nothing. Yet at the same time, she was resurrected together with all that she had meant to him. Hidden there in the darkness. If he had ever thought about her in these 21 years, he would have wondered whether she were still alive. But just now, he realized he had been looking for her, in the church and later in the cafe. And in fact, it was the reason why he had come to this funeral where he had no need to be. He felt Take's hand on his shoulder. What's this about? He dropped his hands and his eyes were dry. How did she die? They shot her in the dunes 3 weeks before liberation. She's buried there in the memorial cemetery, but why should you care so much? Because I know her, Anton said softly. Because I talked to her. I spent the night in their cell with her. I spent the night with her in the cell.
Okay. Alright, so this scene kind of shows how Anton's willing to show his emotions since the war, because it shows how truce had an impact on Anton's life, because he connects that lady he remembered he talked to in the dark to the lady who Tate is talking about. And so the next major scene, if you turn to page 162, this is where Anton takes Sandra to the cemetery back in Harlem, because she wanted to know where her grandparents and her uncle died. But then they come across Truce, and can someone read on page 161 the last paragraph inside a wall?
Inside a wall of the rectangular area lay the neatly arranged rectangular plots of some 100 graves. They were surrounded with immaculately raked gravel. A man was watering with a hose. Here and there, old people brought flowers to the graves or sat whispering on the benches. A few people rested in the shade of a high wall on which names were inscribed in bronze. Anton, surprised but not recognizing anyone, realized that he had half expected to meet Tate here. Sandra asked the gardener if he knew where Truce Kloster's grave was, and he pointed out the plot next to them. Katerina Gebrudia Kloster, 1697. Sandra laid her blue rose on the gravestone. Side by side they stood looking down at it. In the silence, the flag flapping, the rope hitting the mast, were more mournful than any music. Deep down there beneath the sand it was much darker than it had been in the cell, thought Anton. He looked around at the mathematical precision of the plots, all that was left of the chaotic misery of the war. He thought, I should look Takes up, if he's still alive, and tell him that she loved him.
So, if you notice, if you look at her grave, and you read the dates, and it's the same as Annie Schaaf's, September 16, 1920. So it's like there's a connection there between the malicious use of Annie Schaaf and then incorporating that with Truce. But, like, does anybody want to interpret what they think this means? The cemetery means? Like, why he's visiting